All right, well, good morning, everybody. Thanks for attending my session. Pretty excited about this topic. Cybersecurity is something I'm definitely passionate about. Let's get going here. So a little bit about myself. Beaverton High School grad, go Beavs. Also George Fox Bruins, go Bruins. I do have my CISSP, which is the big certification you can get in cybersecurity. This is my first ACPEnw conference since I worked for the Hillsborough School District back 06 and 2010. So it's good to see a lot of familiar faces out there in the crowd. So in 2010, as you know, funding in K-12 went down and I had to go find work elsewhere. So I went to work for a cybersecurity company named SureID in Hillsborough. And I had an opportunity there to learn quite a bit about the cyber side, the information assurance side of IT, which was great. And I'll share those experiences with you here. And then they had a little bit of financial problems themselves. Lost a contract with their number one customer. So in 2017, a bunch of us no longer work there. And I've been doing technology consultant work ever since. And then the last 17 months specifically, I've been back at the Hillsborough School District as a consultant and helping out doing bond project management, specifically in the tech enhanced classroom. So I point that out because I'm not here to talk about Hillsborough School District's cybersecurity response awareness capabilities, because I don't really know much about that. The information I do know is outdated, 10 years old, from when I used to be the operations manager there. But I want to share with you my experiences at SureID. So the goals for this session, I'm going to try and keep it at the 100 level. You know, this is a deep, rich topic. We could spend an entire week-long conference covering nothing but cybersecurity. But really, this is meant to be kind of that primer, give you a little bit of direction about implementing a cybersecurity program in your organization, if you haven't already looked at that. I want to impart the wisdoms I've gained through my experiences and hopefully provide something of value to each of you for attending this session. And also, at the end of my slide deck, I don't think I'll have time to get to it all, but I've included some resources. So I highly recommend you go download a copy of this, and there will be a lot of links for you to click on and further explore this topic. All right. And then lastly, I want to increase our collective cybersecurity knowledge and capabilities. All right, so the whole point is to make sure that we're all rising up together in our responses to the threats that are coming our direction. All right. So quick show of hands. How long have you been doing IT? So anybody less than 5 years in IT? All right. Welcome. All right, in 5 years or more. That's a lot of hands. Awesome. All right, keep your hands up. 10 years or more. Awesome. 15 years or more. Great. 20 years or more. 25. I have to put mine down. Awesome. Anybody over 30? Wow. Awesome. Yeah. Maybe you have a question, sir. Okay. All right, now here's another question. So if 50% or more of your job responsibilities include responsibilities in cybersecurity, show those hands. Awesome. All right, so here's an interesting take on that previous one. How many have been doing it more than 5 years? More than 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So there's way less people in the industry that have been doing cybersecurity for a long period of time than in IT. And it's not that anything that we're doing is new or different. It's more or less the same, the same IT principles we've been using for years. We're just kind of shifting the focus. So with that, as you can imagine, there is a little bit of a supply and demand problem of finding people that have lots of experience in cybersecurity who can come to work for your organizations. All right, so last question here. Quick show of hands if your organization was victim to a successful cybersecurity attack in the past 12 months. All right. I'm sorry. Yeah. Don't steal my thunder. All right. So, yeah. So, any ideas what this number up on the screen represents? So there was a study done by the CyberEdge group, the 2019 Cyber Threat Defense Report. And if you get a chance, I highly recommend you click on that link, download a copy of the report, and read through that. So they solicited responses from 1,500 organizations globally in all sorts of industries, and 78% of those 1,500 responses said that they were victim of a data breach within the last 12 months. So I didn't see 78% of the hands out there. So what does that mean? Perhaps you're too embarrassed to raise your hands. You had more fun than I did last night. Maybe you were asleep through the session here. So perhaps we're an outlier, right? We are so good at what we do that not in my house, right? So it's possible that maybe, if you're not in the management position in your organization, that there was a data breach. Maybe that information was held close to the vest and dealt with and wasn't widely publicized. But I think probably more accurately is, it's quite possible that we've been breached and we just don't know it yet. All right, so any ideas what this number represents? Area code for Seattle, yes. Very good. Awesome. So it should be easy to remember, right? So this is the average number of days that it takes to detect a data breach. That's nearly 7 months. All right, here is an interesting factoid. So how much does a data breach cost an organization? It costs a lot, right? And so in terms of damages to brand, reputation, sales, all sorts of things that we have to deal with, in the aftermath of a data breach. So one interesting thing to look at is how many records do you have in your organization, right? So if you have 100,000 records, right? Easy math. If you have 1 million records, wow, that's I think the cost of an average data breach to an organization was about $150 million or something like that, right? So the beauty is we now have established a budget for you guys for next year for cybersecurity, right? And if you don't talk to your superintendent about your cybersecurity budget, then who will, right? All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit about my my personal journey in building a cybersecurity program. So in summer 2010, when I left the Hillsborough School District, I went to work for a company that provided a product to the branches of the Department of Defense, so Army, Navy, Marine Corps. And I was hired to run not only the IT shop, but also the information assurance shop. It was not something that I had a lot of experience with prior in my career, so I had to get up to speed really quickly. Specifically, the Department of Defense has a Department of Defense information assurance certification and accreditation process that they put you through, right? If you want to do business with them, comply to these things. We're going to come by, we're going to do an audit on you to make sure that you comply. If you don't, we're going to give you the things that you need to fix. Otherwise, after a certain period of time, we're shutting you off and you're not going to do business with us anymore. Right, so I had to get up to speed on that very quickly. In 2012, I had the opportunity to attend an RSA Conference, which was an amazing experience. Hopefully some of you get a chance to do that. It's not the cheapest conference in the world. It's held in San Francisco every year, and I really learned a lot in that first year, and I'll give you a couple of my takeaways here in an upcoming slide. RSA. Don't know off the top of my head. It started out as a cybersecurity product, but they kind of grew into a larger conference. I think they got bought by Symantec, I believe, but I can't remember what the acronym stands for. I'm sorry about that. So in 2013, the Department of Defense decided, you know, that DICAP thing that we told you all that you needed to do, it's just not working for us. Specifically, what's not working for us is, you know, you do all this work, we do an audit, we tell you what's wrong, you fix those things, and then we say, see you in 12 months. Okay, thanks. And then we come back, we do the same thing. We look for findings, we find things, we tell you to fix those things, and we come back, right? So they moved more to a FISMA model, which is the Risk Management Framework, RMF. And that is no longer a moment-in-time snapshot of what my organization looks like at this very minute until you come back to do the next audit. It is more of a mindset of that continual monitoring improvement that happens. So we had to transition to that as an organization, so that was fun to dive into. In 2013, SureID, we also decided to found a Cybersecurity Committee. So there was multiple representation throughout the organization, from executive management to general counsel to folks doing cybersecurity work in our organization. And we really wanted to establish a common language, right? So when we speak about cyber hygiene, right? So that becomes a term that gets thrown around in our organization about, just thinking about doing things kind of like washing your hands after using the restroom, right? These are the things we do. We don't leave our computers unlocked if we get up and go to a meeting or things like that. So we built a common language so that we could all, from different walks of life, understand the conversations that we're having as a group. We created a charter as a committee, what we hope to accomplish. Along with that is our goals. And we chose a security standard that we were going to hold ourselves accountable to, not only in the systems that housed the product that we had for the Department of Defense, but also our corporate systems as well, because it was kind of two separate environments. So do we hold ourselves to that same standard? Yeah, we probably should, right? So there's a whole bunch of different security standards to choose from. I've included those in the appendix of the slide deck. And we chose one and moved forward with that. So in 2013, the Cybersecurity Committee went to RSA and attended a bunch of different sessions and really shared our learnings and takeaways from that, which was very helpful for getting everybody dialed in on this rich topic. So in 2013, coincidentally, was also the big Target breach. You remember seeing that in the news, probably victim of it, and had to, I know I had to get a new debit card from my credit union because of that. At that time, our CEO had an epiphany, and he said, our product is a great thing, but our brand is also very important and has a lot to do with the value of our company. And if we lose our reputation, then we might as well close the doors, right? So that was a little bit of a revelation to think about. There's things that could cause this company to go out of business. We could go bankrupt for a various number of reasons, one of which is a damage to our brand and reputation through a successful cybersecurity attack. So he told us that he didn't want to end up like that poor person that was running Target, and he didn't want his name in the newspapers, at least not for a reason like that. So he told us to make sure that didn't happen. So at that time, the committee kind of decided, you know what, we have day jobs, we have other things pulling us away from this very important topic, and that maybe it's about time that we hired somebody to do nothing but lead the cybersecurity efforts of the organization. It was also decided at that time that that was a hat that perhaps I should give up, or give up my IT hat, one or the other. That there is a conflict of interest if I am responsible for IT and cybersecurity, that I may decide that, well, there's this finding, but I'm going to decide I'm not going to do anything about that because there's other projects that I'm working on, and we'll just put that one on the back shelf, right? So because of that conflict of interest, we decided to create two separate roles and then have those two heads report up. So spent the next 4 years rolling out just a ton of different products, solutions, policies. We did a lot in 4 years and really elevated the organization. And I would say that we were probably the top 99 percentile in terms of companies out there in our response to cybersecurity. It's not to say that we couldn't get hacked or that we wouldn't get hacked, but the likelihood of that is much lower, much lower in our organization than an organization that didn't have the focus that we did. All right. So I want to share with you some things that I found quite interesting in RSA. This was kind of eye-opening for me when I was sitting in your seat not too long ago, which was kind of at the start of the cybersecurity portion of my career. Right. So one of the speakers presented, and he said, "Cybercrime is a business." Right. So in any business, you spend money and you're hoping to make money. Right. So I'm going to hire some people that are really good at what they do at hacking. Right, and maybe I need somebody that knows this one specific piece of technology because that's what I need to hack, and that person charges this amount of money, right? So I'm going to spend money on resources with the hopeful outcome that I'm going to steal something that I can turn around and sell that's going to get me more money than what I spent in the first place. So they're looking for a positive return on their investment, so it's our job not to give them one, right? So we want to do just enough things with our regular patches, our security solutions, email firewalls, our next generation firewalls, right? Our training awareness in our organization. We do enough so that it makes it not impossible for us to get hacked, but too expensive to get hacked to where they're going to say, nah, we're going to go look at someone else. It's also important to keep in mind that you don't spend your entire budget of your organization just on this one piece, right? At SureID, we could have bankrupted the company. We were a $60 million company, right? So we could have spent all $60 million all in, push our poker chips to the center of the table on cybersecurity, right? But what does that do? Then we don't have enough money for people's salaries. We don't have enough money for keeping the lights on, right? So that's probably not a good idea. So, and I alluded to this a second ago, you don't have to outrun the bear, right? You just have to outrun the person that you're faster than. So, and that's really true. You know, my dad, he had a car accessory business back in the 80s when car alarms were really popular, you know, and he would give presentations in conjunction with the local police department about, you know, car thefts and stuff like that. And, you know, the clubs were coming out and these car alarms were coming out. And really, it's not going to prevent somebody from stealing your car. If they want it bad enough, they're going to take it, right? What we're trying to do is we're trying to make it to be like, let me look at this one over here. It doesn't have those things, and this one does. All right. Now, you can spend a lot of money on excellent cybersecurity solutions. Best of breed, most expensive, money's no object, right? You put all these things in place, you have a great staff to run it, support it, get it going, and somebody finds a thumb drive out in the parking lot. What's this? Plugs it in. Confidential salary information do not open .xls. Huh. Right. I also heard of one where you know that social engineering piece is really the weakest link in your organization, right? And it's really taking advantage of people's human nature. So I heard of one where you know, guy comes in, he's dressed really nicely. He's poured a cup of coffee all over himself, right? And he's got these papers in his hand. And he's like, oh, my gosh, you know, I'm supposed to meet with your superintendent in 5 minutes. Oh, you know, this is going to be my job, my butt on the line. Could you print out a fresh set of these documents for me, you know, to the secretary? Okay, sure. Plugs it in the laptop, right. It's got some sort of exploit on there. So if if this defense that we're doing, with the money that we're spending on all these solutions really protects against all these things, right? And I'm looking at how do I take advantage of this organization? How do I compromise them? It's probably not going to be through this hard avenue. It's going to be through the easy avenue, which is appealing to people's human nature. So, it's important to look at your solution holistically, right? If you're building a house and you don't want anybody messing with your stuff, right? So you put these crow's nests with machine guns out front and, floodlights that come on if they sense motion and this and that and the other thing, and yet you do nothing in the backyard, including leaving the back door unlocked, right? What good is all that stuff that you did? It's meaningless, right? So you have to do enough to provide the holistic solution that you're not going to give somebody an easy time. All right, and this one is pretty important. We have to get it right every single day. We have to make sure our systems are patched. We need to make sure that our email firewall is functional. We need to make sure that our users are trained not to click on the link. Don't click on the link. Why did you click on the link? Every single day we have to think like the bad guys. How are they going to compromise us? We need to try to stay one step ahead, right? And not screw up in doing it. They just have to get it right once. So, there's an inordinate amount of effort that we put in versus what a bad actor has to put in. And you alluded to this earlier. There's those that know they've been hacked and those that don't know that they've been hacked, right? So it's not about if, it's when, and really remember that 206 number. We want to shrink that. We want to, if we get attacked, something happens in our environment, we want to know sooner than 206 days so that we can do damage control. All right, and lastly, it's important to pick a standard and get to work. In the RSA conference, one guy was talking about Australia's got this cool model. It's called the Australian Top 4. There was a movie that was out a while ago that talked about there's 6-minute abs, and this guy came out with an idea. Well, I know something better. We can do 5-minute abs, right? So 4 things that I have to do sounds way better than 1,000,000 things I have to do. And they claim that it's 85% effective in deterring any sort of cybersecurity activity in your organization. And I put those at the as an appendix to the slide at the end. And there's all sorts of different standards that you could follow. There's the SANS Top 20. There's the FISMA NIST series of controls, SP853. That's what we used at SureID. There's ISO 27001 and 2 and these are all very prescriptive and tell you exactly what you need to do in your environment. It doesn't matter which one you pick, just pick one and start heading down that path, right? The 1,000-mile journey begins with one step. So unfortunately, despite what salespeople might tell you, there isn't a silver bullet solution for cybersecurity, right? There isn't one thing that you do and you're good and you can forget about it, right? So it's important to keep that in mind that it's definitely a layered approach, and we can't just do it one time. Like, I'm going to virtualize all my servers, right? You do that once. I'm going to move everything to the cloud. You do that once. Cybersecurity isn't something that you do just once and then you're done, right? You have to continually be after that, and it's a moving target, and it never ends. All right, so I want to bring this kind of around to you guys. So you're sitting there kind of going, so what are the next steps for your organization? What can you do based on my experiences?
Turn everything off.
Turn everything off, yeah. MORDOC, the preventer of information security. Yeah, thanks for that. So yes, you could go back to chalk. You never had to reboot this, Yeah, those are good old days. So it's really important. We're in education, right? That's something near and dear to us. We're lifelong learners, most of us, constantly reading about something, trying to stay current with everything going on out there. So cybersecurity, try and stay current, try to keep up with the topic, find out what's going on out there, and take that and hopefully take those things that you learn and share them with other people. Get everybody else as excited about the topic as you are. And one important thing to remember is, I mentioned the supply and demand problem, that there wasn't very many of us that had our hands up on the cybersecurity side of the house for any length of time. It's really expensive to hire people that have that security experience and background. And it's way better of a strategy for you guys to develop the folks in-house, right? This is some cool, exciting stuff. I think staff, sometimes get stuck in the humdrum of their daily stuff that they're very good at. Well, give them something new, something excited, passionate that they can embrace and take on. And then hopefully they don't leave because they can go find a job making six figures somewhere. All right. Here's another one, which is perform a tabletop exercise with your cabinet. So this was something that we did at SureID, and it was awesome. So we had a vendor come in, and we paid them for this engagement, and they sat down, and they went through a presentation portion. Then we switched to the tabletop interactive session, and they were talking about a hypothetical solution. Okay, so this thing happens in your organization, and what we're looking for is, what's the response? So we had people all around the table from executive marketing, executive management, marketing, our general counsel was there, IT folks were there, cybersecurity folks were there, right? And so okay, hypothetically, you get a phone call from the Oregonian, and they said, yeah, I just want to let you know that I'm working on a story. There was, out on the dark web, there was, a whole bunch of names and social security numbers of people that are in your company's database, right? And I can give you a couple examples if you're interested. And I was kind of wondering, if you had a response to this, right? Go. Well, you should have seen the look on our marketing person's face, who is also our public information officer for stuff like this. His eyes got really big. He broke out in a cold sweat. It's like, somebody poke him. I think he's dead. So he really didn't have a good response. He saw that this is something very real that could happen, and saw that something that this is, in his lifetime, he might be responsible for something very real like this. And so what's the response? What do I tell the Oregonian? Right. So it was very eye-opening to those around the table that we should probably come up with something called an incident response plan. Right. So let's put a pin on that conversation about the Oregonian calling, and let's circle the wagons. And okay, if something like that did happen, what would be our response? What do we do? Well, we should probably do this. We should probably do that. You come up with that incident response plan. You exercise it, and hopefully you've accounted for 90% of the real world scenarios that might come across your door in that situation. So that was a great eye-opening experience for all the folks in that room, and really brought everybody into the conversation. They quickly realized this isn't just a problem for IT to solve and a scapegoat to blame if something like this happened. This is all of our responsibility, right? And here's my specific part in that. So one of the things you probably want to do is build a cybersecurity coalition, right? I just alluded to that. Bring everybody into the conversation. This isn't just an IT-specific piece. This is all of our responsibility. And you want to create a culture of cybersecurity. Do folks in your organization know not to click the link? Okay, the last time you did one of these fish me exercises, what was the percentage of people that actually clicked on that link, right? Are we training people? Do they understand why it's important not to click the link and to question certain things, right? And you hear the help desk. It's like, oh man, today we got 50 calls because people were giving us false positives, like, well, I'd rather do that than, at least it shows that they're paying attention, right? And that's something that you want to build into your organization. All right, duty of care is something that is important, should be established in your organization, right? Imagine there's some sort of trial going on. You're being called as an expert witness on something that happened in your organization, right? And there's some blame being thrown around about an incident that happened that involved XYZ, right? So Mr. Expert Witness, Miss Expert Witness, what's your response? It's like, well, management never told me that it was important that we do regular backups, right? It's like, okay. And then, okay, management, what's your response to that? Well, right, so establishing duty of care in your organization looks something like we believe data is important, and the privacy of that data is equally as important, and we do things to protect the privacy of that data, right? So you're not saying what it is that you do, you're just saying that you do that, and oh, and by the way, there's a standard that was written that talks about how we do that, right? So the executive cabinet's job would be to create those high-level policies to establish that duty of care, and then it would be our jobs to say, okay, how do we take that and roll it into something actionable, something that we do, right? So nightly we do backups. We take moment-in-time snapshots based on XYZ, right? We keep those for X amount of time. We exercise regularly. Once a month we try and restore a given system, and we have those on a schedule, right? So those are the standards that you write that describe how you do that thing, but then you also have kind of these overlying things of what it is that you're doing. All right, you want to quantify and communicate the risk to your executive cabinet, right? If you know that there's a high probability that you're going to get hacked in this certain way, well, are you explaining that in a way that makes your leadership team take notice and makes it their problem as well as your problem, right? And on those things, you really need to say, here's the impact, here's the likelihood, I'm bubbling up to you. We can either accept that risk, we can mitigate that risk, or we can transfer that risk, right? And maybe a good transfer tactic is, well, let's move email to the cloud, and then this becomes Microsoft's problem, and this is not something that my staff needs to deal with, right? So with those, highlighting the risk, bring a couple of potential solutions. Well, we could do this, or we could do that. Here's what those options cost. What do you want to do, right? That helps you guys establish a budget with your executive team to move forward with these. And if they, I'll talk about that in a second. So you also want to build security into everything that you do. It's not a separate thing. It's integral to the main thing, right? Of keeping systems online, making sure people can access them, making sure that the data in those systems has integrity, that hasn't been modified, deleted, compromised, exfiltrated, right? So when you're standing up a solution, you want to build security into that, right? If you have an initiative to build a business continuity disaster recovery plan out and figure out what that looks like. You guys probably heard the story of the problems that Beaverton School District had a few years ago, right before school started, and so they ended up building out a new data center, right, as a disaster recovery, so this type of issue won't happen ever again, right? If you have a project like that has a budget because you have people's attention, make sure that you're incorporating cybersecurity in the solution, because maybe the solution that you had previously didn't have those things incorporated with it, and to forklift it and add those things would be difficult, right? Versus standing up this new thing, make sure it's integrated. All right, and as with anything, you want to look for those quick wins, right? If you do pay for a consultant to come in and tell you what's wrong with your organization, what are they going to find? Well, all your systems aren't patched. You got this going on, that going on. Some of those things are very easy to do. Just take care of them and make sure that you stay on top of them moving forward if you've gotten behind. And some of those things don't really cost any money. You're not buying a solution. It's just you're going and you're prioritizing your staff's time to make sure that gets taken care of. So. All right, and this one's a little tough, right? So if your executive team isn't listening to you when you're highlighting these risks and saying, look, okay, Chicken Little, get out of my office. It's the 20th time that you've told me that. Maybe it's time that you hire someone to come in and do a security audit, right? So you have this independent third party. They have no skin in the game. It doesn't matter to them if you're the most well-run company or the worst-run company. Their job is to look under the hood, kick the tires, figure out what's good, what's bad, and provide you a report that says that, right? So having that report in your hand to put on the superintendent's desk does two things. One, it validates the things that you've been saying the whole time. And two, it's now a document that they can't avoid, right? So again, going back to what I was saying earlier, if you get called on the stand to testify about X, Y, Z, there was some big incident that happened in your organization, like Target, for instance. If you remember, what had happened there was, there was this HVAC computer that controlled the controls, and it had somehow got compromised. Well, it was on the same network as all the computers, including the point-of-sale machines in the Target store, right? And then that spread, and it was bad juju. So, how could you let this happen? Who was asleep at the wheel, right? And then the media looks at the head of IT and said, how could you let this happen? It's like, well, I don't know how to say this, but I've been telling the CEO for years that we need to do something about that. And here's 20 emails to that effect, right? So whose problem was it? Was it the head of IT? Well, not really. They highlighted the risk. They raised it up, and it wasn't listened to, right? So, that it could be that report is a call to action, right? Let's rally behind this. Let's get this done. But it could also be a little CYA if something bad does happen. Now, if you pay for an audit, or let's say that there's something that that needs to get done, right, and you just haven't gotten around to doing it, I highly recommend you do it, right? Because if you know something and you don't take action, and somebody does come around knocking and say, well, how did you let this happen, right? Is it an appropriate excuse to say, well, I knew about it, I just was too busy and I did other things instead? That's not going to go over so well. So you want to make sure that you take care of those things. And there's so many ways in which we could spend our time, right? But spending our time doing something that we know needs to get done, that we know is an issue, is never a bad idea. All right, and lastly, you don't want to be the highest ranking person in your organization that knows a secret, right? If you know something, don't get caught holding that, and the person above you doesn't know that, right? So by sharing that with the person above you, it's now their responsibility, right? And she may choose to hang on to that or pass it up, right? And your superintendent, she may choose to hang on to that or may talk to the board about that, right? But you don't want to be the person getting caught holding the bag on that. So, all right, with that, we're about out of time. As I mentioned, we have a lot of appendix at the end of the slide deck. I highly recommend you download a copy of this, take a look at the links I've sent. And here's my contact information if I can help you get started in any way. Don't click on links. You can trust me. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Appreciate your time.